What was the most ridiculous thing you got in trouble for at school? Needing to use the restroom. Some teachers are straight crazy. Algebra teacher yelled at me for asking for help. He told me don't ask me, ask your partner first. Then I turned around and asked my partner for help. He then yelled me at again, don't ask her. If you need help, ask me. I saw a dust devil for the first time and said what the? I got in trouble for it. The teacher said you could have said a bad word, but I didn't. Get over it. It was PJ day. We were washing our hands for lunch. I accidentally got a little water on another kid's sleeve. Teacher flips out how I ruined the kid's expensive pajamas. The kid didn't even care. Reading a book. Apparently the head of history found me sitting on a bench reading across from her office window, intimidating. In 3rd grade I got 10% taken off one of my tests for spelling my name wrong. When I went to go tell the teacher I knew how to spell my name, she sent me to the principal for smarting off. Yo, I know how to spell my own name. Washing my hands wrong. My kindergarten teacher didn't like that I flicked excess water off my hands before reaching for the soap. She kept me there for a while until she finally gave up on me. Psycho. We had a girls' entrance and a boys' entrance at my secondary modern school, UK, in 1972. I was 12 and proud of the result of my first visit to a proper grown-up hairdresser's, what we now call a mullet but back then was known as a feather cut and was extremely fashionable for both boys and girls at the time. I was in the crowd going through the door when a teacher roared, "You boy, what do you think you're doing?" Being very much a girl, I didn't take any notice until I felt the hand of impending doom on my shoulder. It was my own form teacher who didn't recognize me without my waist-length ponytail. I got detention for holding hands with my boyfriend in the hallway. I was 13, man. I also got sent to the principal's office because in 11th grade for reading too fast. It was the ditch of a substitute teacher, Pam. Everyone hated Pam. She had a gross, wet, moist cough all the time. She sent kids to the office for literally anything. Duck you, Pam. I doodled on my jeans in 10th grade and the assistant principal literally pulled me out of class and called my aunt to come get me. When she got there, he just started going off and pointing to me with "Look at what she did." My aunt just rolled her eyes and said, "She's 15. I don't know what you expected." Not putting my jacket and backpack in my locker. All of my classes were on the first floor and one end of the building. My assigned locker was on the second floor and in the furthest corner from my classes. The administrators refused to move my locker. So pretty much every day this one teacher would write me up and I got a couple in school suspension for it. Finally, after a few meetings, I got the principal involved and she essentially told the teacher to leave me alone. Edit. Wow, didn't think this would take off like this. Glad to see I'm not the only one that went through this. Saying hi to the vice principal. I finished my exam within 15 minutes but got scolded for not taking it seriously, then told me to actually use my brain until the time runs out, so I went back to my seat and sleep for 80 minutes. The day after the result is out and I got an almost perfect score. Also, one time I dated the principal's only daughter. 2 things. Getting bullied and trying to get help from staff. And yelling at a guest teacher because they wouldn't let me go to the bathroom, so I announced to the class that I was bleeding from my V. One time I was talking about how I went hunting with my dad over the weekend and the school made me talk to a counselor about it. Not in trouble, but I got called down to the dean's office cause a girl was really into me and I wasn't about it, so he called me down to tell me not to make it weird for her. In 2nd grade I got in trouble for literally breathing. I was yelled at in front of my class by another teacher who was visiting my class. Saw that I breathed in heavily because she held our class up. So she berated and yelled how disrespectful I was. She made me cry and told me to sit in another class and to write an apology. I wrote "sorry for breathing." She was the scientist of all CNTS. For rolling my eyes. Teacher shouted at me in front of the whole class. I didn't roll my eyes. 2 months into the 1st grade I got suspended for lightly touching the arm of the teacher. This wasn't the first time I got in trouble with her. She was very strict and I grew up with my rather laid back mother and I've been to a, let's call it, hippie kindergarten. So she was my first real authority person. We were standing outside at the classroom door. There was a lot of noise and I wanted to tell her something but she did not listen. I do not remember what it was, so I touched her arm lightly to get her attention. I got suspended and the school janitor watched me until my mother picked me up. I did switch schools after that to a much more understanding and patient teacher. Went to a new school for a few months in high school. Every student had to have an ID badge around their neck, visible at all times. If you got caught without your ID for whatever reason you get detention. However, you could get a temp ID from the office for the day. Forgot my ID at home one day but didn't notice till after first period. So not wanting to risk getting caught by a teacher, I went to the office before second period to get a temp. The secretary said it was very responsible to get a temp instead of trying to be sneaky about it for the day. Then in the very next second she wrote me out a detention slip for not having my badge all throughout first period and breaking the rules. Never understood that rule. Looking back, I honestly think it was just a skeezy trap to get students to turn themselves in for some dumb reason. Public school is asinine. I once got in trouble for scratching my ear in second grade. She thought I was plugging my ear while she was talking, even when I calmly explained to her that I wasn't. Not being in school for a couple days because of a family vacation. Like, what was I supposed to do? Run away from my family to go to school? A student teacher told me and 2 other students to put our desks in a circle. I said 3 desks make a triangle, not a circle. She kicked me out of the class for the day. In the 80s, yes, I'm a boomer. We had an art teacher very interested in modern art. In one of the lectures, he had a glowing talk on Andy Warhol's film, Man Sleeping. It's a film where a man sleeps for 8 hours, and the camera only changed position once to change film rolls. So after my friend and I talked with him about the limits of how far you could push art, he answered that if the intent was there, and nobody got hurt, you could take it to the limit. During recess, my friend and I broke into the art studio, piled up all the chairs into an enormous heap of furniture, and took paint buckets to splash onto the chairs. When our teacher, dear Mr. Charleville, came back and found our pile of chairs and paint, he went ballistic. But after explaining that we had an artistic intent and nobody got hurt, we had accomplished our goal of making art. After huffing and puffing, he finally conceded and agreed. Our principal, however, didn't find it quite as artistic. Got the highest score in art that year, though. In middle school I was truant, skipped a few times and often had bad grades. That's about it. Well, in high school I somehow was able to view my disciplinary record for that school, and apparently I had walked by a teacher's room and also shown a laser in her eye and then proceeded to run from her and hide in the restroom, which I had never even owned a laser pointer, let alone done that. So they put somebody else's record on mine or made up something about me, lol. So I was the good nerdy kid in school. My sophomore year we had a new principal and she saw some video that showed a guy with 12 guns hidden on his body. The new principal made a rule that your t-shirt had to be shorter than your fingertips at your side. I'm a small guy so all my shirts were non-compliant. So long story short, I was sent to in-school detention for the first time in my life. I was drinking water. The next thing I remember was a flying book. Eating half a gummy worm. My teacher told me to stop eating. I ate the other half of the gummy worm I was eating. He held out his hands and told me to spit it out. I didn't, obviously. Weird dude. I was the only Mexican in a mostly white, private high school. Because of my ethnicity, the kids went around making rumors about how I was working as a drug dealer and that I was probably always high in class. This was my freshman year and I haven't even known what marijuana even was at that time. Anyways, I came to school one day with my locker completely ripped apart. The teachers raided my locker and didn't bother to clean up the mess they made. That's not what pissed me off, though. It was their alibi for doing so. They had told me that they brought drug-sniffing dogs into the school and they were attracted to my locker. That's when I knew they were completely speaking out their ass. It's been 9 years and I'm still livid. Not using a good enough eraser. It was Halloween and decided to give out candy to my other classmates. We've been friends from kindergarten to 11th grade since it's a charter school and I already know the gist of who's allergic to what. Decided to give some out for Halloween with permission from my homeroom teacher and then got detention after school from my math teacher because I didn't ask. Straight up crazy. 1. Someone opened a package and tossed a few shreds of clear cellophane on the floor in front of their desk. I had also dropped some paper in front of my desk. The teacher pointed and told me to clean up that mess. I cleaned up my paper. She came back and sent me to the principal because the cellophane that was not mine and that I didn't even see was still there. First grade. 2. A friend took another kid's lunchbox, playing around, and handed it to me. I tossed it 2 feet across the table to its waiting owner. The teacher gave me a detention for throwing things. 12th grade. It wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that I did plenty of things deserving of punishment. I was noodling with my long hair in the back while the teacher was taking roll at the beginning of class. He gave a 20% grade deduction for the day if you were being disruptive. He gave it to me, told him he was full of crap and got sent to the school office. The vice principal told me he could suspend me for saying the teacher was full of crap. I said, is it really worth the fuss? Would you suspend someone for the same thing or deduct their daily grade for just twiddling hair during roll call? I told him I would make a huge stink as it was completely ridiculous. Got a detention day. Not me, but a friend. The entire room was talking while the teacher was trying to get people's attention. Nobody was listening no matter how hard she tried. Well, everybody except for the one black kid who was sitting there quietly. She ended up directing her anger at him, removing him from the classroom. He was the nicest ducking kid growing up too. Well, except for the one time when he threw his ruler, with his name on it, across the room, hitting the teacher. The teacher picked up the ruler, looked across the room where we were both standing, and then threw me out. I got in school suspension because I wore blue tights under a dress. They were not a school approved color. This was my senior year of high school. My school decided to enforce a dress code. Navy was one of our colors, but apparently my tights weren't navy enough. I was a straight A student who never got suspended till this. I got in trouble for participating in a group science experiment. The class was divided into several groups, 4 or 5 students per group. We didn't have benches for experiments since it was a standard classroom, not a science lab. So the equipment for each group was placed on a desk. My group mates were crowded around the desk and there wasn't really room for me. Plus it was a simple experiment, so there wasn't anything for me to actually do anyway. So I sat at an adjacent desk, facing our group's equipment, watched what my group mates were doing, and took notes. The teacher decided that I wasn't participating, which wasn't entirely wrong I guess, but refused to let me explain that there wasn't room for me or anything for me to do, and that I was taking notes on the experiment. He made me sit in the hall for the remainder of the class period and gave me detention, which I didn't bother showing up for. Never got in trouble for skipping detention, which I thought was kind of weird. I got caned for bullying a guy I'd never spoken to nor met. Turns out he burst out crying because his dad died. The teacher asked him why, and he said that guy over there has been bullying me about my dead dad all week, pointing me out across the yard. Me, oblivious, just going about my day. When I was getting the cane, the deputy head was shouting never do it again. And I was shouting back, I won't sir. No idea at all why I was there. No idea why I have a problem with authority now. No clues. I only found out the story a couple of years later when he apologized. I'd been caned plenty of times since, so IDNGAF by then. In high school, friends and I played ultimate frisbee in the mornings out on a practice field. Not an official club, just being around. But most days we had a teacher there to make sure we didn't get hurt, sue the school or some BS. Anyway, one day we didn't have a teacher there and the school officer guard guy decided it was his chance to get us and deep it. Being kids, he ran around the field football stadium to get away from his lard ass. Eventually the secondary-ish guard in the first main one cornered us and took down our names. Told us we'd be getting detention for running away from school, which wasn't the case. We just ran around a field from where he was. Whatever. So all day long, my friends are getting called down to the principal's office, telling their sides of the story in 2S and 3S. I never get called. See, I'm one of those PPL who is a JR. but go by my middle name to avoid confusion with my dad. So when LADAS officer took down our names, me not thinking just gave my name as I go by it, middle. Last, the school had no record of a kid with that name, so I didn't get called in. Why didn't they see my first, middle, and last name in the record and call me down? Who knows? Administration was dumb. Nobody got in actual trouble as everyone had the same story about running around the field and not away from school grounds. But still, weird story about a fatus guard not happy kids were getting exercise and having fun early in the morning. In the late 90s, high school had a keyboarding class to teach people how to type on computers, you know, home rolling row and all that s. I had already been playing MUDs for a few years by then, so when I took the class, instead of typing 15 words a minute with some accuracy, I was typing about 115 words per minute with accuracy. So after blowing through all the material, I would end up just helping others, which is basically just reminding them to feel for the bumps in the keyboard and keep practicing, you can do it. I was told I was cheating and given an F. F the teacher. Wearing a black undershirt. We had a dress code at my school where you had to wear a collared shirt. They didn't really care about the color or the design much, except you couldn't have really big words or logos on them. One day I actually got written up because I had on a black shirt underneath my collared shirt. The dean that wrote me up really hated me, so of course it was a really obscure rule that no one really cared about. But he liked to get me in trouble for whatever dress code violation he could. I got in trouble so much that I actually got voted most likely to be out of dress code my senior year. Got suspended for not being straight. So yeah. I forgot my homework, received a 0 and then proceeded to get detention for the 0. I was in kindergarten and I could not unbutton my pants button to use the restroom. I asked the teacher for help and she took scissors and cut off my button. I did not have a belt and it happened early in the day. I could not play at recess or join activities because I had to hold my pants up all day. I was so embarrassed. I don't think my mom understood what I was trying to tell her and she assumed my button fell off. 30 years later and I still want to beat the it out of that old cunt of a teacher. Her son, who was maybe in his late teens, was the teacher's assistant, and he threw a ball at my feet during dodgeball as hard as he could. I flew head first into a steel bench. I had to get 12 stitches in my right ear because it almost sliced in half. Whoa, this woke up some old anger. I was unconsciously tapping my head with my finger. I wasn't annoying anyone, or so I thought, since there was no sound produced. Anyway, my teacher asked me why am I punching myself in the head. What? I looked confused for a few seconds, being like, are you talking to me? She then proceeded yelling at me and stuff, saying how what I was doing was disrespectful. The other students were whispering about what the hell is wrong with her. I got my hair cut into a pineapple in 6th grade, was immediately sent home. 4th grade, winter, cold as duck. All I had were these thin gloves that did nothing towards keeping my hands warm. My hands were getting near frostbitten. I go inside during recess to warm up. Teacher sees me doing this and demands I go back outside. Despite my protests, I don't. I get sent to the principal's office. Joke's on you, itch. I stayed warm. Jesuit High School. Detention was called JUG. It stood for Justice Under God. It was in 30 minutes intervals of sitting in silence doing nothing after school. If you missed it without an excuse, it doubled. There was a school rule that you had to check the JUG list every day. Well, I didn't. I was given 2 units intended for a kid with a similar name to mine. So by the time I realized I had JUG, it doubled to 16 units. I explained my situation to the guy in charge of discipline. He saw my point and removed the original 2 units. But since I broke the rule of checking the list, I had to do the other 14. 13 years old. I wore a tank top for gym class we had outside AMD. It was 90°F outside. The teacher is a kinda creepy middle-aged man. No one was distracted by my shoulders except him. I've had anxiety and depression since I was a kid, so obviously that means I have emotional issues. I really needed to talk to someone, so I'd talk to one of the guidance counselors a lot. One time when I needed him, I think he wasn't available. I checked back later, and the principal told me to stay in class. I went to check one more time if he was available. The principal happened to go by and he gave me 2 days of detention. I made a big deal and he cut it to just 1 day. My middle school was ducking trash. Also my high school accused me of terrorism. But that's another story. I had a quite strange art teacher. She was always trying to look the best in front of everyone, but also loved to degrade children for being less talented than herself. One day we were supposed to draw a beach and she told us to only color it stroke by stroke, with color pencils, and only in one direction. We also weren't allowed to rotate the paper, because real artists never do that, and I later learned that it was a total BS. At that moment I was like, if I color it equally strong nobody will see the strokes either way, and our teacher noticed my technique. So, I got suspended for coloring the way a 7-year-old child would. Had a marker put and kid bumped into me. He turned around to say sorry and the marker grazed his shirt leaving a small mark. We both said oh, sorry, and was kind of funny. Some kid told a teacher I chased the kid with the marker to intentionally draw on him. The teacher didn't believe in the original guy for some reason. I almost got caned by the principal, instead 2 lunch detentions. That was the day I lost faith in adults and knew they can actually be wrong and make mistakes. I have an identical twin. It was April Fool's Day in elementary school. We dressed the same and switched classes. Some kid snitches on us. Long story short, we got suspended from school for 5 days. We also did this in high school, switched classes. Same kid ratted us out, we got suspended again. The kid got boxed into a corner by us at the end of the day, lol. I asked for a refund on the lunch that I had prepaid for because they ran out of food. I was forced to apologize to some volunteer lunch lady who replied, "No you're not," when I said I'm sorry. Burped the alphabet during lunch. Got to F and farted. Sent to the head teacher's office. In my 3rd grade class we had a wooden door to the bathroom that a small piece broke off of. It was small but sharp. Well, during free time, my teacher didn't give a f as long as we had fun. People were playing by the bathroom and someone grabbed the broken piece and poked another student with it. My teacher made everyone discreetly write on a notice the top 2 people who they thought did it. My name was one of them. The other kid got in trouble as well. Such a stupid method of sending kids to the office. It was me.